Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are live here. This is NATP. I am Sam, and I am joined today by Roger Nemeth. Roger is an incredible source of knowledge. Roger, we've had you on a couple times before, and it's always a delight to talk to you. You're with Tax Help Software, and we are going to be talking today about a couple of different things. But first, why don't you introduce yourself, if you don't mind?
So my name's Roger Nemeth. I'm an enrolled agent and been doing taxes since about 2006. I don't do taxes anymore. While managing tax franchises, our people used to pull transcripts, and as the general manager, they were it was a very manual process that I've kind of built a glorified spreadsheet. And then over the past decade, we've kind of grown into the go-to software for all things transcripts and analysis of tax data. And with that, we've gotten pulled into everything around e-services. So just as a byproduct, and that kind of is what brings us here today. Just to give you an idea how far this has all come, in 2009, the IRS reported something like 5 million transcripts were downloaded. And last year alone, just our users downloaded 1.5 billion, or they made a 1.5 billion successful requests. Some of those came back as CAF failed, which means, didn't have permission yet. But we have confirmed over 1 billion transcripts downloaded just in the past couple of years. So it's gone from just a couple of million industry wide to in the billions. So I think people have started to use the online resources at the IRS, and there's a couple of big changes, and that's what brings us to today's presentation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, granted, tax season just ended. So, the last thing people probably want to think about is more news from the IRS. But alas, here we are. So, Roger, tell me a little bit about, IDMe. That's going to be one of the topics that we're going to talk about. So, tell me what you know.
Gotcha. So I'll give you just a little background what got us here. So it seems like every 2 to 4 years, the IRS tries to come up with a more secure way for people to log in. And we used to have secure access, which was really tied to who your cell phone was registered to. But a lot of people had issues. If you had T-Mobile, it didn't necessarily work. If I got a number that used to be assigned to you, your name might show up on my account. So it was a very cumbersome process that required the IRS to do a lot of manual validations. It was some hoops we had to jump through as a community. So over the past, we've been actually working on the focus groups now for, it seems like, about 6 years with the IRS, myself and other software providers, about the best way to have the IRS achieve its goals. And in that process, they've kind of come up with a commercial company called IDMe, was the only one that met the certificate requirements set by the IRS tech folks. They said it had to meet this level of compliance. And there's one company out there called IDMe. IRS started to roll it out back early in 2022, and it got a lot of pushback because they were using what's called biometric data. Basically, they were getting a picture of you submitted, and they were comparing it to your driver's license, which you were submitting. And so there was pushback about privacy and kind of some other things going on around that. And the IRS originally said, hey, we're going to look at some alternative options. They came back 3 months later and basically have said that that they are just going back to IDME. It's the only one that meets the criteria. And with that, and just Sam, making sure that you can hear me. I know the
Yes, I
video.
can. My
Okay, good,
video
good.
went out. So, I'm not sure. I'm so sorry about that technical difficulties, but
Gotcha. And I'll keep going. And
yes.
unfortunately for you, it's not the most flattering shot with your eyes closed and your head.
Oh gosh. Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, I'll keep going, and just let me know when you get back in.
Perfect.
Um, so pursuant to the pushback, the IRS said that they would look at some alternative options to IDMe, which they are. There's something called login.gov that Social Security and Veterans Administration is playing around with a little bit as well. But right now we are, for better or for worse, moving forward with IDMe. Not me. It's not my decision. This is, what IRS has been informed of. So on May 16th, anybody that's had your legacy credentials, which were referred to as secure access, that is going to stop working. The IRS is now advising May 16th, and you will have to have an IDMe account to access e-services. You're also going to need it to either change, update, or apply for new EFINs. And if you had a taxpayer account that was also tied to your secure access to access your personal information, you'll also need IDMe for that. Um, and one thing about this community, we all like to do a lot of research before we actually do something. If you've been on the fence about, "Oh, I don't know, what it's going to take for me to do IDMe," literally, if you just get a driver's license and just jump into the process, and you can get in there by going into any of the e-service logins, it'll say, "Hey, if you want to sign up for IDMe, click here." It took me 20 minutes the other night, and I'll detail my challenges that I had with it. Maybe that'll help some of you. But literally 95% of the people on this broadcast in less than 30 minutes will be able to go through the process. As far as the biometric concerns, people worried that, oh, the government's going to have my picture and all that information. Let me just kind of throw this out there. I'm a tech guy, so I kind of know about tech a little bit. The government's already got your picture. They've got your driver's license, they've got your passport, they've got, if you were in the military, they've got your DNA and your dental records. I mean, I remember I was in the late 80s, and they took our dental records and a DNA swab. And they're very blunt about it. If you die in combat, we only have a finger left. We want to know it's you. So um, over time, we've all ended up in the government picture database of one way or the other. I worked as a narcotics officer in Florida before I did taxes back in the early 2000s. It was amazing the amount of public access information that was out there about all of us. So just kind of putting it out there that IDMe isn't going to capture anything that they don't already have. The other thing is the IRS did come out and said IDMe had to purge it within 24 hours of them using it. So if you're worried about that company having it, it's under their contract that they have to purge the data, and it is being audited. If you don't want to give them your biometric data at all to begin with, there are two processes you can use for IDMe. The one is called the self-service portal. And I'll talk a little bit more about that one, but that's one where you don't have to talk to anybody. You basically upload your driver's license, you do a little selfie video, it matches, you confirm your data, and you're good to go. That's what I did. It worked. I didn't have any privacy concerns. The other one is a video chat. So very similar to what Sam and I are currently doing. I didn't do that method, so I can't speak to it. But my understanding is you upload the driver's license to them and or hold it next to your face at the same time. So it's kind of like getting ID'd in a bar, but virtually through a video camera. And so instead of them storing biometric data, they're actually looking at you through a video chat to say, that image looks a lot like Roger Nemeth. So much like we would let you into a bar if you were 21 or onto an airplane, that works as well. And with that, it's the human doing the validation, not the automation of facial recognition or anything like that. I know the guys at IDMe in that we are on several focus groups together. There's, as far as I know, there's nothing nefarious going on. And I kind of am saying that not to give anybody fear, but anybody that was on the message groups back in middle 2022, there was a lot of, oh my gosh, I don't want to give the government, my fingerprints. Well, if you're an EA, CPA, or attorney, they already got your fingerprints. I know I had to do it when I signed up for my EFIN and my EA way back in the day. So, anyways, just kind of alleviating some of those terms. I had a close friend that reached out and literally told me, I guess I'm going to be done being a tax pro because I'm not giving the government this information. I'm like, but you have a driver's license, you had a Facebook account, so understand that Facebook is doing facial rec on you too, and they worked hand in hand with the government from everything I've read for a while. So the cat's out of the bag for any of us that are trying to live on an island without electricity and no ID out there. So um, if that alleviates any concerns, hopefully that helps. Anything that the government would glean from what IDMe is doing, they already have it. As long as you have a driver's license and state ID or a passport, and you need one of those documents in order to sign up for an EFIN anyway, so you're already got, if that's
Mhm.
the whole thing out there. Um, And again, the deadline for that is May 16th. So if you don't do it by May 16th, you just won't be able to access your EFIN or pull transcripts or anything like that until you do the process. So I recommend everybody go ahead and do that as soon as possible. But I'm going to pause right there, Sam, to see if you have any questions or anybody else has any questions, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail about the process that hopefully will take the fear away.
That sounds great. Yeah, I am not seeing any questions from anyone yet, but just to recap, can you explain the process of pulling a transcript? Just you mentioned that just now, that you need these credentials to do that.
Yeah, so absolutely. So a tax pro, an EA, CPA, or attorney are what's noted as Circular 230 professionals. We can get either a 2848 signed by the client and then us, or an 8821. We can fax it to the practitioner unit or the CAF unit or upload it. And we'll talk a little bit about those different methods at the end and my recommendations there. But once you get CAF authority, or the practitioner line physically sees the POA or the 8821 with your signature, they can either manually download transcripts into what's called your e-services mailbox, your SOR, or if you already are in the system with the approval, the CAF approval, you can then download transcripts through transcript delivery system, or if you use software like Tax Help Software, or there's a couple different products out there in our space as well. You can use those softwares to then download transcripts without actually talking to anybody at the IRS. And that's been a real popular, like I said, we've gone from 5 million in 2009 to over 1 billion requests a year. And so it's definitely something the community has embraced. And in my opinion, it's better to do a tax return with a wage and income transcript so you know what's been reported to the IRS. It leads to less issues for your clients if you know what's been reported on their income. So that would just be one example how the tax pro community would leverage transcripts and a quick explanation of how to get that data and then utilize it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you mentioned now, you had a little bit more news about IDMe, or you wanted to go into it a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, so just so it's not so scary, I was just going to kind of walk through the quick steps and how easy it was, and then the kind of the things that was a struggle for me. So
Mhm.
in the self-service portal, and I've got a little list over here on the other computer. So what you're going to do is you are going to take a picture of your driver's license or other state ID or passport. You have several options; they list them out for you, and you're then going to upload them into the portal. And I will say, if you're going to do this process, use a cell phone versus a computer. And the reason for that is in cell phones, the or the camera and the video camera are built into the operating system. And logging into this webinar, I tried to do it on my computer. And what happened was it is an extra piece of hardware attached to the computer. And so I had trouble connecting the camera to this process. Computers are a little harder to integrate pictures and videos into, whereas we all know we take a selfie and we can immediately send it to any app we want. So the recommendation is to use a telephone with a good internet connection, a cell phone or smartphone more specifically. You can either take a picture, a front and back of your driver's license before or during this process. Right. Once that's done, it then has you step with a neutral background and good lighting, and you take a little video of your face. So it basically puts your face in a little oval, and you just kind of make sure you're lined up until it says you're okay. It then says, all right, we have your driver's license, we have your little selfie video. And the reason they do video is to make sure it's 3D. If it's just an image, I could already have a picture of Sam, for example, that I got, and I could just take a selfie. So the reason they use a selfie video is it can tell if it's 3D or not, as opposed to me just holding a picture of Samantha up and using that to sneak through and doing it fraudulently. So just to kind of answer that, once you're done there, it confirms, I think, your address and your social. It says, hey, double check your information. In my case, the data it imported from my driver's license, the address was a little wrong. It just didn't read in right. So I
Mhm.
hand typed it in, triple check it. Don't
Mhm.
you're going to run into problems if you submit a wrong date of birth or something like that. So triple check it, hit submit. I think it says confirm one more time because it's important everything's right. and I had my credentials. The only other snag that I ran into was I had my camera set on maximum resolution for my pictures, the basically the 4K or whatever. So
Mhm.
when I tried to upload the images of my driver's license initially, it said it's too big. So what I had to do was, it's called resizing your image. So you may want to take the picture of your driver's license before, read in your phone how to resize it to 20% of original size, which is what worked for me. But that was the only hurdle that I really ran into, was the image was too big. And one other thing to be cautious about: when I originally went into IDMe, it said I already had an IDMe account. And it
Hmm.
turns out that Lowe's and Home Depot required me to do an IDMe validation to be a veteran to get my discounts.
Hmm.
And although the civilian account is different than the IRS account, IDMe only wants you to have one set of credentials.
Hmm.
So unfortunately, I had used my email address, which is my personal email address, and I would have preferred to use my business address for the IRS stuff. And so what I had to do is I moved forward signing up with my personal email address with IDMe. If you forget what that password is, there's a forgot my password. You click it, it'll send you a link to whatever email it is. You validate, change your password to something you're going to remember. Once you get in and validated, you can then follow the instructions with IDMe to update your email address to something. But I recommend that you don't update it till after you get certified, because it could cause some problems. So
Okay.
other than you already having an IDMe account and having to click forgot password and having your image be too high a res, those were really the only two problems I've heard from some people.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe a recent change of address from a couple people. They're validating against some database. So if it says your address doesn't match, you're going to have to follow whatever instructions for recent address changes. And I don't know what those are yet.
Okay. And so if you had to guess, how long did the process take you from start to
It,
finish?
so from start to finish, I didn't live stream it on Facebook. From the time I
Mhm.
did the first post of, hey, here it goes, until, hey, I'm in, including the time it took me to post and then resize those pictures, was like 22 minutes.
Okay. That's a good.
And yep, feedback from other people that didn't have the picture thing, didn't already have an IDMe account, is less than 6 minutes.
Okay. Wow. That's great. We have a couple of questions that came through. And so the first one, just to clarify, if you have an EFIN already, do you have to go through these steps?
So the answer to that would be, technically you don't need to go in once you have an EFIN, you have it. However, in the IRM, the IRS requires that you check your EFIN several times during the year to make sure that somebody hasn't used it fraudulently. So you're comparing the number of returns the IRS has filed versus what your tax software has, and they should be within about 5% of each other. In my experience, they never match exactly. Like if I had 1,000 returns in my software, sometimes the IRS would say like 997 or 998. I didn't feel like there was fraud, and a lot of other people have said that number's been off slightly. So your EFIN will not stop working if you don't update. However, the IRS does require you to manually go in and check several times a year. And if they suspect that your EFIN has been um, acquired by somebody else fraudulently, and you basically don't have any way to go in and check it, then it could lead to some problems. So nothing will stop working, but in order to continually access your EFIN, I highly recommend that you update this process.
Okay. And then we had another question come through. So tax preparers will be able to access customers' yearly transcripts. Is there a way to verify all financial documents before we submit their return?
So the wage and income so the answer is kind of, and I'll kind of explain that. So 5 years ago, the IRS said we're not going to release the current year wage and income transcripts until the third week of May. So if you have submitted a tax return prior to April 15th, there's no way to get wage data from the IRS for that current tax year. So starting the third week in May, yes, you'll get your W-2s and your early reported wage and income documents. If you have them under extension, usually the wage and income is for the most part complete by October 15th, which is the extension deadline. So yes, under extension, you should have access to wage and income transcripts. I've heard some national speakers, such as Frank Augustino and others. They've kind of indicated that if you have access to data and you don't use it, and you submit incorrect data, and their thoughts are, not a direct ethical violation, but you really should be pulling at least wage and income transcripts for any tax return you're filing under the extension deadline because the information is accessible to you. It's the number one post filing compliance issue that we run into as tax pros. And so it makes life easier. If you have data to take a test in advance, why would you not access that data if it was permissible? And that's kind of the thought process there. Yeah, I always hear from a CPA that's been doing it 50 years saying, I've never pulled a transcript in my life. You're going to be retiring soon. This message isn't for you. Going forward, I think the industry is going to be a react or proactive, not reactive, like it was for so many years.
Mhm.
So
Interesting. That's good to know. Anything else on the IDMe topic, Roger, that you want to discuss? Go ahead.
not really. That's it. I mean, when we're done here, if you have your driver's license and a smartphone and you've been worried about it, just do it. If you screw it up, you try again tomorrow. If
Mhm.
it's one of the things that you have to reach out to them for, I'd rather know you have to do that now than in 3 weeks when you really need something. Um, Over the past 3 years, we've had a lot of people where their CAF numbers have been shut down by accident by the IRS. They've shut EFINs down mistakenly. So if that happens to you and you haven't registered, now you've got to go through a scramble. And it's if you're going to be accessing the IRS systems, you are going to need access to your EFIN. I know if you update or buy new tax software, they need screenshots of your EFIN screen. So if you don't do this, you're not going to be able to update. Maybe you open a new office and you need a new EFIN. That's another reason that you're going to need these credentials. And it honestly wasn't that bad. There are tax pros that are on these message boards, and people are like, "Well, I don't know if I want to give them my picture," and the not me, but other people are like, just suck it up and do it. By the time you've complained about it, it'll be over with and done with. And in my opinion, from a tech standpoint, the government's already got your image. They they've already got you. I promise that driver's licenses, passports, you've registered obviously to do tax returns and get an EFIN. You're got. They've got anything that IDMe is going to have from you. So I don't think that should be a concern. It's part of a bigger conversation if you want it to be, but as far as this goes, it's just part of you're a certified professional in most cases, either by being a P10 holder, an EFIN holder, an EACPA or attorney. So in my opinion, it's a non-issue. I think the discussion needs to be had going forward about the government and privacy,
Mhm.
but that's kind of a different ball game than what we're discussing here. So
Definitely. And so then just to clarify too, what are the alternatives of using IDMe? Is there an alternative at this point? And do
so
you think
so
there will be in the future?
so what I talked about my crazy friend when he said I'm going to stop being
Mhm.
a tax pro because
Mhm.
of this. There's nothing currently. However,
Mhm.
the IRS is looking at alternatives that meet the security requirement. One of those is an internal system called login.gov that veterans and Social Security Administration might be utilizing. I don't know how far out from deployment. It took forever and a day for IDMe to get done. But at the end of the day, they want to compare an ID to your face. So it's going to be more of the same. So, if you want me to tell you they're going to be able to prick your finger and get it out of DNA, I think that's more invasive. So, it's there's only so many different ways to verify somebody's identity
Mhm.
if if that helps with all this. So,
Yeah. We have another comment that came through from James. I have had an IDMe account for at least 5 years. It was required for New York State, and it was somehow verified with the typical 3-question method. But James never submitted a picture. How does one know if your IDMe account has met all the requirements?
So more than likely in your case, you have an IDMe account that hasn't been IRS certified or whatever level that they've talked about being certified. And the same was true with secure access. If a taxpayer went in and just had to confirm to sign up for an online payment agreement, they didn't have to go through the cell phone validation. So there's always been different levels. So in your case, I think you've probably got one of the lower levels. And if you were to try to log in to transcript delivery system, using your credentials, you'll get some kind of error that says please register, or not, you might not be at the level if it detects that it is an IDMe account. So I don't know at what point you would be stopped, but I do know you need to go through the extra levels of validation. Your account is probably a tier 1 and it needs to be a tier 5, and I'm making those tiers up, but there is some different levels internally. I just don't know what they're called.
Perfect. Anything else on this topic, Roger? Otherwise, we can move on to a few other things that you
So,
wanted to discuss.
that's pretty much it for IDMe. It's the old Nike saying, just do it. If anybody has some unusual stuff, you can go to our website, taxhelpsoftware.com. There's a contact us. If you want to send me an email with a story about what happened to you, don't send me an email saying I'm stuck. What do I do next? You're going to have to go through either IRS support or them. But if you want to share your stories with me about, where you got blocked, or, what happened, something maybe I could help in future presentations, I would by all means appreciate it. I'm not going to be your support go-to. It's going to be contact IRS and or IDMe. If that doesn't help, reach out to stakeholder liaison and say, hey, nobody will help me. But I would be interested if you go to Tax Help Software, contact us and say, hey, I'm just sharing what my story, and if you think it might help somebody in the future, that would be my recommendation there. And that pretty much wraps up IDMe. I think it's a big nothing burger. I think it is a conversation around privacy and security, but I think that's a bigger conversation that just doesn't apply to this.
Sure. Oh, I must have lost you, Roger. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. All right, there we are. We got you back.
Good.
So yeah, sorry. Can you pick? We were just wrapping up IDMe.
Yep. So, and again, with that, it's not to take away from the larger privacy concerns that we have with social media and everything. I'm a big fan of that. It needs to be brought up, and Congress needs to look at it. But for intents and purposes, we're all tax professionals. The IRS already knows who we are. They have our social. They have our wage and income transcripts. If you're an EACPA attorney, an EFIN holder, a P10 holder, they've already validated who you are. So from this standpoint, they've already got you from anything you're going to give to IDMe, and IDMe is not storing the information. So I think that's all we can pretty much cover with it. Just do it. If you're worried about the biometrics, do the video call instead of the self-service portal.
Perfect. That's great. What else have you got for us, Roger? There are a few other things that have been happening.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting week. So CAF. So most of us are here because we probably pull transcripts in one way or another. And the aggravation that we've had over the past, at least since the beginning of COVID, and even going back before that, hold times seem to have settled down, or not hold times, but CAF processing times for 8821 and 2848 over the past 18 months have kind of leveled around 21 days. And it's been aggravating for industry that we have to submit a power of attorney or an 8821 and wait 21 days to get access. Yeah, we can call PPS and get them immediately, but that's cumbersome because you got to call and deal with hold times. This week, we've got numerous reports that it's between 1 and 5 days. And we knew that the IRS was working on some kind of surge of staffing in the CAF unit to get processed up. And it looks like that surge has taken place. I don't know if it'll hold at 1 to 5 days, but the fact that a week ago people were reporting 21 days, and I've gotten over 30, 40 reports from users that things sent in a week ago are anywhere from 1 to 5 days. And the problem was people weren't checking in 1 to 5 days. They were waiting a week or something. So we think that it's been faster than some people even think it is. We work with some really big entities that process thousands a month, and they are seeing 1 to 5 days with a downward trend. So it looks like the IRS, through a staffing increase, has been able to get the CAF unit down to just a couple of days, which is nice. I hope it'll sustain. And kind of to lead into that, the next question comes: what are my recommendations for submitting forms? Because there are several different methods. So if there's not any questions, I'll kind of go into, I'll explain what the 4 are, and I'll give you, just do it the way I'm telling you. And I think it's the best way. You're welcome to use anything you want. But the traditional method has been to fax. And the problem with fax is faxes can be blurry. They can maybe not be accepted. It had some issues in getting the fax through. Mailing remains a valid option. and yes, you heard me correct, US mail remains a valid option. If you're sitting on 1,000 POAs or 8821s, your option is to fax them 1,000 one at a time, or upload them one at a time. And the next option, we'll talk about it, but you have to answer 5 certification questions for each one. So you're basically going to answer 5,000 questions over and over. So that's going to take you the better part of a day. So I like mailing for 1,000. Anything over 100, I tell people put it in either a letter size box or a letter size envelope, and do like, priority mail, or, I use priority mail, UPS or FedEx, put some kind of tracking on, make sure you scan the originals into your computer. And I would mail the originals. That way the IRS will dispose of them and you have the digital copy saved, which meets your reporting requirements. They will then process them in the same order that they were received, with what was faxed in, mailed in, and uploaded in.
Hmm.
Okay. So large numbers, I still recommend the US mail. It's a method that works pretty well, and you're not having to spend all day doing 1,000
Mhm.
faxes or 100 faxes. Um, the
That's good.
third, yeah, absolutely. The third way, and the most recommended way that I have, if you get a power of attorney or 8821 right now, is to use what's called the 2848 and 8821 upload portal. There's 2 online methods now. One is an upload portal that's basically, the best way to describe it is a digital fax. You log in with your e-service credentials, IDMe, and secure access for another couple weeks, and you answer 5 questions. Did you validate the customer's identity? Were they local? Is it e-signed? And did you follow protocols? I think are the questions. You then upload it. You'd have to scan it in your computer and then upload it. And then you'd have to do that for 100, 500, 1,000 times, however many times to get that done. The other online method requires the taxpayer to get an IDMe account. And the tax pro basically requests permission because they know they're social, and then it sends a request to their account. Some people will set up an extra computer in their lobby or their office for their customers to create IDMe accounts so they can access what's called the taxpayer online account. And in there, they could immediately give the tax pro access to their data, their
Hmm.
transcripts. Okay.
Interesting.
That one holds the most promise for the future, but is the most buggy out there. Although it's supposed to be instant, we have a lot of reports that you don't get all the years approved. Like, so if I'm requesting 10 years, only
Mhm.
5 get approved.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's been buggy, and we're not recommending people use it. None of the large resolution firms or any of the really large stakeholders that do this as part of a process have been successful on a large scale of
Hmm.
the online process with the taxpayer creating an account and the tax pro. So my recommended option, it was the option 3, that is basically the virtual fax or the upload portal option. People refer to it the same way. That one does allow an e-signature, but if you get an e-signed 8821 or 2848, you can never fax it to an RO or the practitioner line. You're stuck waiting on them to process it at the CAF unit. But optimistically, if it's now 1 to 5 days, that may be the option. I may update my guidance. If CAF becomes 1 to 3 days, I'm going to say start getting digital signatures if the CAF unit is just sitting on a 3-day backlog.
Mhm.
The reason I've been recommending wet signatures is if you're waiting 21 days, but you need transcripts, you could still take the wet signature on the form and call the practitioner line and get them put in your mailbox immediately.
Hmm. Okay. We had another comment come through, and just hoping you can address this. Taxpayers need an IDMe account also, not just tax professionals. Is that your understanding as well?
That is for option number 4. Yes,
Okay.
that's the 4th option, that where the tax pro basically creates an online power of attorney or tax information authorization. It then goes to their account. Now, if they don't have an IDMe account with the IRS yet, an online account, the request will wait until their account is created. And last time we met with the IRS, what they basically said is the taxpayer isn't creating an account.
Mm.
They're creating access to an account that already exists.
Hmm.
So all taxpayers and tax pros already have an account. Whether or not you're accessing that account is a different story.
Sure, that makes sense. Interesting. Okay. What else? Anything else, Roger, on that topic?
That's pretty much it for the power of attorneys. I think it's an exciting time in the CAF unit in that we've gone through our worst delays we've ever seen in the past 2 years, but we've also seen the most money and resources and new initiatives. And I think the IRS is finally realizing that if it relies on industry and tax pros to do a lot of these things that the IRS has been doing, taxpayers in the end can be better serviced,
Mhm,
and there will be an increase in voluntary compliance. There's already talk about software companies importing wage and income transcripts directly into tax software, just like we now do, like importing W-2s from ADP or
mhm,
investment statements from Merrill Lynch and stuff. There's been a lot of conversation around, why not just let us import that data from the IRS computers? It's what the IRS is going to validate it with anyway. And
mhm,
where's the time in completing a tax return? It's not the knowledge in our head. That usually goes pretty quick. It's entering data into a system. And
mhm,
we're in one of those legacy environments that requires humans to touch a keyboard, when
mhm.
in reality, we're just moving data from one database into another application. Let's just automate that process. So I think you're going to see industry start to adopt importing of data from these third party sources that don't require the typing of the data.
Interesting. That could be a huge shift for the industry as a whole. I mean, just saving hours.
Yes. And one of the things that we've gotten in questions come up is Chat GPT and tax. So
Yep.
Chat GPT's been the biggest thing. And I can tell you, we've played with Chat GPT. People are asking fake questions on Facebook and some of the Facebook groups
Mhm,
I'm on. I now go and put their questions into Facebook and might improve them a little bit, streamline them down. And I've been
mhm,
posting the responses. And I say this is a Chat GPT response.
mhm,
I think ChatGPT is going to replace Google. I think it's great for case research. If you
mhm,
haven't bought any case research products from like Thompson or anybody, if you go into ChatGPT and say, find me information on reasonable cost penalty abatements in regards to medical conditions with actual case law examples, I've had good success. Now, not every case it cites is on point, but it's a
mhm,
lot easier than me going to find some. And so it is helping it. Think of it as
mhm.
an enhanced Google search is kind of the best way I can say.
Yeah,
Um,
good
I
starting point.
Yeah, well, people ask, is ChatGPT going to replace what a tax pro does?
Mhm,
It's headed that direction, but I think it's years away. Right now, if you ask ChatGPT to review a tax return or a tax opinion thing, it
mhm,
basically says the tax law is too complex for ChatGPT.
yeah,
And so you can use it to find references, but it's not yet going to be able to prepare a return.
mhm.
Um, but I I
It's
think it's going
definitely
to change
something
a
to
lot of
watch.
what we do. Yeah. So
Yeah,
definitely keep an eye on it and use it as a tool when you can use it. It's been
absolutely.
great for us for case research. It's generated reasonable cost penalty abatement letters for us that have been
Mhm,
very nice.
mhm.
They haven't been perfect, but it's a lot better than you typing out a letter and kind of trying to make it sound right. So
Yeah, definitely. Anything else, Roger, that you think is important to discuss today? We've covered a lot.
yeah, the only other thing out there is the IRS notices being turned back on, the collection
Mhm,
notices. Um, Whether you're just a tax preparer that prepares taxes or a tax resolution expert, when the wave finally gets turned back on, we are all going to get inquiries about, what do I do about these letters? So even if you're tax
mhm,
prep and you've got, say, 500 clients and you're like, I don't want to do anything with tax resolution, you're about to get pulled into at least question and answers about this. So I definitely recommend maybe taking a webinar or two about, basic issues like how to set up installment agreements.
mhm,
Because there's more to it now than just getting a 72-month agreement. You can now get agreements up to 10 years.
mm,
Sometimes you don't even need to fill out financial statements anymore in a lot of cases. So it's the whole installment agreement thing has changed over the past couple of years. So there's some really good classes that you can take out with installment agreements coming up. But I would
mhm,
educate yourself on, the notices are going to ramp up, and people, I don't think there's enough tax resolution people to handle all the cases coming in. And I
mhm,
think anybody that is under the tax shingle your own customers are going to get notices. More notices are going to go out over the next 6 months than I think ever in the history of the
Hmm.
IRS.
Interesting.
So, and we don't know when that date is. The IRS came out today and said
Mhm.
we don't have a date. It's on the commissioner's desk. Um, there's strong indications CP14s are going to start coming out on June 1st. CP14 is the generic, hey, you owe us money and you better send it to us.
Mhm.
It's not levies, it's not liens. It's just kind of that initial hint. It makes sense that would be the first notice that goes out. But what do taxpayers do with notices? They call their
Mhm.
tax pros. So start studying up on notices, and maybe start helping your clients.
Definitely a great way to, increase those services and money, of course, too.
Yeah.
So,
So and we're going to be at NATP. I'm not speaking this year. I had some family stuff come on. I am not going to be a speaker this year, but there's plenty. I've seen the itinerary down there for the classes. There's
mhm,
lots
mhm,
of really good classes and some great speakers surrounding whether you just want to do basic resolution for your tax clients, all the way up to if you want to add it to your practice as an additional revenue stream versus just a
mhm.
convenience to your existing clients. Lots of good topics and speakers. We'll be there in the vendor area of the booth, and stop by and say hi. And we've got our partnership with NATP that's going on, I think, the second, third, or fourth year. COVID's thrown me off. I'm
Yeah.
off by 2 years with all my estimates. But if you're interested in learning more about us under the NATP partnership, if you go to taxhelpsoftware.com, there's a button at the top of our website that says NATP members, and we have the discount there, and some more information for NATP members.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again for joining me, Roger. Even with the technical difficulties, it was great talking to you, of course, as always. Anything else that you want to end on? Any other hot
That's
tips
it.
you can
Just
use?
no, just another tax season's under our belt. I think the
Mhm.
next tax season is going to be probably, I'm hexing us, knock on wood, but hopefully the most normal that we've had in a while. We don't have extensions, and barring
Mhm.
something else coming up. I will say with the IRS notices, Biden announced his candidacy a week ago, and the speculation has been the IRS doesn't want to ramp up enforcement and collections during a presidential election cycle.
Interesting.
So there is some fear in the industry that if these notices don't start up, it could be after November of next year.
Okay.
So fingers crossed. I hopefully
Mhm.
they get it done here shortly. We're still 18 months away from an election, so
Mhm.
hopefully they'll get something going. I think it's good for industry because there's a lot of uncollected money out there that the IRS has not claimed yet. And like I've paid my taxes. I
Mhm.
think we all need to pay a
Yeah.
little bit anyway. So
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Roger. I really appreciate it. If there, like we said, if you are interested in checking out tax help software, NATP members do get a special rate. So make sure to check out our website or taxhelpsoftware.com/NATP. That is all we have now. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.
all right, thank you very much. See you. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.